There's a decision every day. Today's November 7th, 2017, that I think we are making mostly unconsciously. And sometimes you'll watch things that inspire you. I'll watch things that inspire me and remind me of my inner champion. They'll remind me of my desire to have a commitment to my champion. To have a commitment to my inner champion is the goal, to make it consciously every day now, is the commitment to be committed to my inner champion. I think we've said it enough times, but it's not enough if it's not done every day. So, okay. As opposed to having sparks of reminders that come up certain times, and there's this flush of energy, and there's this intensity of state that gets us in this resourceful remembering of who we really are, what we really want to do. It's dark out today. Oh, this is better. Okay. This commitment to our inner champion, to make it every day consciously, as opposed to forgetting it, losing state, not remembering our resourcefulness until something outside of us, until we run across something that reminds us, remembers, inspires, and brings it about in us, is to hopefully repeat that feeling enough, making it a ritual. I have this ritualistic morning that I am thriving off of now, because I'm realizing what it takes to sustain my state is the repetition of the ritual, to consciously and deliberately design my life, to create it, the dream that is so deep within. And if we feel like there's this knowing, but it doesn't fully actualize, or we feel off focus, we feel out of focus or off track, it's really the physicalization of lifestyle. Like the physicalization physically in our body, physically in our brain, connecting those two, so that what I want is me to have this conscious commitment every single day, every single morning, every single moment, every single night. And I'll get it at night. I'll remember more at night when, for me, I feel like the pressure is off, and the distraction of seeing the micro experience appearance be so different than the macro intended visualization. What cuts through? What keeps consistent? What keeps the momentum of the energy up, so that there's not such a droop? I notice this with me, is that there's such a process sometimes. And mine is like, because I'm so emotionally developed that I can really feel with such a depth, I can understand emotion. That's not what needs to be expanded and strengthened. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's where people, they just get the messaging mixed up. When there's that serves to such a great extent emotional depth, and that that's what serves me as my emotional awareness to myself, to lead me, to direct me, so that I'm so deliberately living all the time. Like I'm deliberately responding to message and God info that what needs to be strengthened is, like I said before, the belief and the basis of the boundary, my baseline of where I stand and what my normal, like, that there's only a lowest point that I go to anymore, and it's high up. That's what I'm wanting to create, is this strength, so that, and that the baseline is my commitment to this inner champion that we all have inside us. It's just the art of life, of figuring out how the uniqueness of that champion, what it means, if it's uncategorized. Sometimes it might be easy if you feel like you've got such a already previously categorized champion in you, that whatever you're a champion in is already created, and it's up to you to master it, and all the challenges that come with that. However, what I am finding the creativity in is what happens when our champion is uncategorized. What happens when the champion in us hasn't been created yet, literally, but also in other people. So as opposed to looking outward at what other champions have created, to look for, okay, what am I, and thinking that it has to be what is already defined as a champion. I mean, if Olympics aren't your thing to be a champion in sport, as an example, then the relaying message of, well, then I guess maybe that I'm not a champion, makes no sense, because the measure that we're checking ourselves and calibrating ourselves on is totally irrelevant. And we're missing what is actually ready to just fruitfully explode if we nurture it faithfully, consistently and faithfully, commit daily. Like every waking moment and breath is for the commitment of the realization of our champion. So what gets us away from that? Lots of things, and I think those things get in only when perspective is missed. Because if there's this broad, I'm very like, how do I say, expansive in my talk, in my language, when I communicate about a topic, a specific issue, like a deliberate event, something very specific. I respond, when I'm talking to other people, very broadly, very like macro perspective, like big kahuna of what's the actual whole point, like the perspective, when there's so many different perspectives and they can get so detailed. It's less on the technique of the detail and more on the religious practice that we employ of the whole mindset. Because I don't know if this happens to you, but for me, I can get things of true victory that remind me of the hugest perspective I can come to. Like my brain goes wide. And I remember like the whole purpose of me being alive. There was a reason that I was born, that everything is happening as a gift serving a higher, bigger purpose than I can even imagine. And that faith in trusting God that it is the only thing to be at play with, then everything else just trickles down. Like, it's like a river. I always feel that I am in this massive orchestrated energy of care about the big thing, care about your champion, and everything else. If you get the mountain right, if you get the water flow right for you, then everything else, the answers, the reason, they just flow. And you just know what to do, because we're always going back to the height of it. What am I doing this all for? Like, every moment I ask myself that, what am I doing this for? What am I doing this little behavior for? And this is the thing, is even if, oh my gosh, okay, lots is happening. Even if what the fuck was I saying? Even if we don't acknowledge the big purpose, none of my hand gestures are being caught at the top. Visualize it, imagine it. So when we're getting caught up in the detail of like where this water is going in this part of the river around these rocks, and we are not paying attention to the big perspective, does not mean that that does not stem all the way back to it. It's like, if you're so obsessed, concerned, concentrated on the branch, twig of the very end of this being perfect, and you're denying your whole tree, doesn't mean it still doesn't exist. Doesn't mean it's still at play. Doesn't mean it's still being affected by not being watered, not being focused on, not being cared for, not being watched out for. It will eventually, and then you wonder why this twig, this branch, stem is getting rotten. That, I'm like, what's the real thing that's causing it? The root that's causing it. So the forgetting, literally the forgetting of the focus, the forgetting of the self, like the forgetting that there is a champion in there. It might be so forgotten, like me saying this might sound like, well, I don't actually think that there is. And that's a concept. It's like, oh my gosh, remember a time that you had a champion fucking moment, like when you championed yourself, when you felt you were larger than life. Like, remember a moment that you knew you were huge.